Get set for another 30 minutes of stories about the fascinating people of Kansas. Coming up.
Once I got older and I look back on the way that I was raised, it just gave me a deeper appreciation for a true family life.
See how this Rose Hill barber put his life lessons into actions. Virgil Tingley understood the importance of sharing love and laughter with youngsters, the kind of things he didn't have when he was a child also.
I tell folks that I think that the best thing for them to do for when they can't find anything else is to read a book.
Great advice from somebody who should know. Hallie Carpenter was a librarian for 50 years. Then at age 97, she decided it was time to move on to something else. Larry was there for her last day on the job. Plus,
people come up and say, "Oh, you're so-and-so." I said, "No." She said, "Yes, you are." "Yes, you are. I've seen you on television. I know you're so-and-so."
Well, they didn't always get the name right, but they knew the face. He was a popular character actor in the golden days of movies and TV. I sat down to visit with him after he had moved back to Kansas to retire. Also,
again, that idea of fulfilling what the students kind of dream of is fulfilling to me. This place and space and facility has challenged me in a way that is more than just a job.
he helped define what theater was at Bethel College in North Newton. And as Arlo Caspar prepared to direct his final production, he reflected back on the importance of the dramatic arts in the lives of his students and their audiences. Also,
I believe that we cannot better ourselves for tomorrow unless we know about our yesterdays.
She was front and center in the effort to preserve history in her hometown of Augusta. Learn why Doyline Foreman believed that you can't move forward unless you first move back. Hello, thank you for joining us. I'm Susan Peters.
And I'm Larry Hatteberg. Those are just some of the stories we'll rewind and revisit on this edition of Hatteberg's People. These stories are like old friends. Their lives radiate from the screen like prophets of the past. They were teachers, but not in a classroom. Instead, they taught about life to those around them who cared to listen, and I was their student.
After suffering heartache and hardship as a child, Virgil Tingley emerged as a joyful, loving parent, something he never had growing up.
Now, Virgil learned so much about the things that really mattered, and he was eager to live out that in every way that he could.
Yeah, you know, if 10% of the cars coming by here would stop, I would be a rich man.
In many ways, Rose Hill barber Virgil Tingley is already a rich man.
We was going to go the Mohawk route.
Virgil believes his life has been blessed with humor.
Oh, by the way, I went up on my haircuts.
That's a good time to tell somebody that.
Blessed with family.
I've been handed a platter that very few people get handed in their life.
And donning the face paint and big shoes, his life is blessed as Cornbread the Clown for neighborhood birthday parties.
Hi, guys!
But there hasn't always been laughter in Virgil's life.
Basically, ornery it sums me up, I think.
In his early years, Virgil's father died and his mother was unable to care for him and his siblings. He went to an Oklahoma orphanage.
And since I was the littlest, I was always the one that was put up to do the most stuff, either that or get beat up. We never got into any real trouble, but we was just into mischievous type stuff.
After the orphanage, a series of foster homes, but Virgil says that was a good experience.
And once I got older and I look back on the way that I was raised, it just gave me a deeper appreciation for a true family life. And so that's, I've strived to be just as good a parent as I could be. Gee, a purple herring, you don't think.
And maybe that's why Virgil enjoys his clown work, creating smiles that weren't always a part of his life.
You know, my fingers go. They get tired, they got to take a rest. They do.
He tells his story tonight to encourage current foster parents that they do make a difference and to let the children they care for know that there can be a happy ending.
The love and attention that those children get from the foster parents is probably the most love and attention that they'll ever get. Well, one of my big goals in life was to have a nice big family table, and I got it. And the object of it was to have a big family table and have it full. And our table, it's been full many a time. About it, that I'm very fortunate.
Now, in 2013, Virgil and his wife moved to a small town in northern Wisconsin to be close to her family. He doesn't do the clown bit anymore, but he does run a barbershop there and is still concerned with helping young people. And here he is donating $2,000 to the Industrial Arts program at the local high school. He was just really a kind man who had had a very difficult childhood and wanted to make sure that his kids didn't have the childhood that he had, and that he could help others in the community. Just a, what we would all term a good guy.
Just a good guy, and he did not let his past reflect his future. And that's hard to do a lot of times.
Oh, it is.
And
but
he did it.
He survived.
Mm-hmm. Okay, from one inspiration to another. Hallie Carpenter devoted her life to books and reading and serving her community.
Now, Hallie is fondly remembered in her hometown of Attica, where she ran the public library for decades.
Well, I think that's the secret. Just keep working. I think once you quit, too bad.
Hallie Carpenter should know all the secrets.
I was 97 the 6th of October.
Age is just a number, like the 24 trains a day that rumble through Attica. Hallie has been on the same track for 50 years. Her station in life has been the Attica Library, just a half a block from her home.
I never have had very far to walk.
But now there is change in the air, and a change in Hallie's life.
Oh, I like books. Yes.
For 5 decades, Hallie has served the community by working at the library. She's been librarian at least 3 times, and it is her love of books that kept her here.
I tell folks that I think that the best thing for them to do for when they can't find anything else is to read a book.
Outside, the community is ready to honor this lady who enriched Attica by living the good life. And a modest one, too.
They've had a birthday party for me several years on my 90, and then 95, and I tried to get them and tell them not to tell people how old I was. But now, who cares?
Hallie is still full of surprises. Any favorite books in this area?
Well, not really. Right here, how about this one?
Moving slowly and deliberately, she was waiting for me. And what a good book that is.
Yeah, it is interesting.
They've been on here so long, Hallie, they don't want to let go.
I know.
On this day, Hallie turned in her keys to Lillian, the current librarian. Hallie believes it's time to move on in life, but this place is hard to forget.
I'll give you a hug. It's the stories. I love a good story. And there's a world of good stories here.
Her favorites are Louis L'Amour, and this town's favorite is Hallie Carpenter, who, like the trains that never stop, is one of those people this town will never forget.
We're still blowing. Oh, yes, I'll miss it. I'll probably come back.
Now, after retiring from that library, Hallie enjoyed life in Attica for another 7 years. She passed away in 2003 at the age of 100. 103. And everybody in Attica knew her at the library. And I mean, she's just one of those people who the library was made for her, really.
Really, and not how much she contributed, being as old as she was, 97. She probably had a lot of stories to tell herself.
She did, and when you talked to her, she didn't feel or sound like 97.
She didn't?
No, she sounded, it was wonderful. I mean, she was just in the right place at the right time.
She lives on in Attica.
Doing the right thing. Okay.
All the world is a stage, and all the men and women are merely players.
Boy, isn't that true. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts.
Those words were from Shakespeare. They describe all of our lives in the context of a grand performance.
Now see here how they apply to Arlo Caspar.
I've always felt that live theater is an experiment from the word one to the end.
Oh, it's not true.
Well, it is.
I love you for saying it all the same.
Arlo Caspar is an audience of one.
Oh, Andy.
I was making a lot of notes having to do with accuracy and timing. All right. How many of us are going to be here today?
For 35 years, Arlo Caspar has been the man.
It's my world, yes.
The man who is the glue of the Bethel College Theater Department.
I'm convinced that theater is a necessary and probably one of the most obvious use or representations of liberal arts, since theater does involve everything.
Perhaps it's because I'm not very happy.
Well, who is these days? Very few.
Unlike the characters in the play he is currently directing, Arlo has been very happy creating and molding lives.
I'll say, man, this is really what you want to do, though. I mean, this is, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
In the world of paint and wire and memories, the bright lights have shone on hundreds of Arlo's productions, occasionally pushing the limits of his conservative audiences.
And she was in such pain, she came hopping and swearing right out here and stepped right on the garden rake.
Yeah, I feel fortunate that there's been a place that's as much like home, supportive. You know, I came with this building.
Well, the building will stay, but Arlo will leave much of the work to others. But these faces,
oh yes,
and these moments have been the lifeblood of a man who believed that dramatic arts were a window to our soul.
Again, that idea of fulfilling what the students kind of dream of is fulfilling to me. This place and space and facility has challenged me in a way that is more than just a job.
Now, Arlo's wife, Catherine, recently retired from her position teaching vocal music at Bethel College.
She received a Fulbright scholarship to train professional singers in Paraguay. So that's where she and Caspar now live for most of the year.
Yeah, meanwhile, their daughter Rachel, a Bethel graduate too, is a Broadway actress in New York City. Amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, following in her dad's footsteps.
Okay, we're going to go back to the 80s now, where a longtime Hollywood actor was living a quiet, simple life in his Kansas hometown.
Now, his face was familiar to moviegoers and TV watchers of yesteryear. He was a popular character actor for decades, and then he decided to move back to Kansas to play his final scene.
How do you do? My name is Barnes. We're doing a little article on the answering services. We're from Vogue magazine. We'd just like to ask you a couple of questions.
Vogue?
Yes.
The actor's name was Dort Clark. Born in Wellington, he came back in 1977 to retire.
You have the kind of face that I'll bet when you went shopping and were out in different places, people would come up and they'd say, you know, I know you, I know you, but just, you know.
Oh, definitely, you know. And but what amazes me is people come up and say, oh, you're so-and-so. I said, no. She said, yes, you are. Guess you are. I've seen you on television. I know you're so-and-so. And I finally sometimes I say, yeah, that's me, and then move on out of the way, you know.
Dort made a career out of show business when he left Kansas in 1940, playing in movies like In Harm's Way with John Wayne and Bells Are Ringing with Judy Holliday. Dort was a regular on Broadway in South Pacific and did television shows like General Hospital, the FBI, the Monkees, the Partridge Family, and many others.
Sometimes I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd be on the set at 8 o'clock and then work all day and do a matinee and an evening performance and then go home and learn lines. That's the roughest. But money's good, so what the hell? You got 5 kids, you do anything.
In the movie In Harm's Way, Dort remembers John Wayne as not only a great actor, but a nice guy.
Signal a 50-degree turn to starboard.
We all went back to the hotel to eat, and he had his family there. I don't know, 10 or 12 of them around the table, and I was sitting by myself. By golly, he had to send over for me, come over, eat with us, you know, and then picked up the entire check. Thank God, I couldn't afford it.
After the movie, the Duke gave him a cup.
Oh, yeah, to Duke from Dort in Harm's Way.
Okay, sister, hang it up.
Excuse me, sir. What do you mean?
Come on, get your toothbrush and come on along here. That's right.
What was Judy Holliday like?
Oh, a dream. Just a dream, you know.
Dort had a face that you probably saw hundreds of times. He worked hard and gives good advice to young people who may want to head for the bright lights.
Get your education first, because you can always rely on that, where you can't always rely on acting.
Coming back to Wellington in 1977, Dort lives quietly with his wife Louise and his pet dog Sugar.
That's a good girl. That's a big girl. This has been home. Yeah. And I've never forgotten it as long. When I first went to New York, I said, no, Wellington's going to be my home. And it is, it has, and will always be.
Are you sure about this, Inspector Barnes? Mr. Barnes, you meathead. I'm going to get a promotion for closing up this joint.
Now, not long after that interview, Dort went to perform in that big stage in the sky. He was 71, but he worked with actors like John Wayne and so many others of his time. You might not remember his name, but if you saw his picture, you would remember him in these big old shows of the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Well, I'm going to go home and Google him.
Well,
I mean, I'm sure he'll come up a lot.
It will. It will.
All right.
You'll enjoy his shows.
You've heard the saying before, those who are ignorant of history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, Doyline Foreman of Augusta took that to heart. Doyline was curator of the city's historical museum and in 1988 was focused on restoring a critical piece of Augusta's past.
Wood and mortars show time's decay. It's an old building, 1868 to be exact. History lives in the generations of settlers who used this building. Preachers, school children, shopkeepers, and folks that helped build Augusta. Today, people like Doyline Foreman want to make sure we never forget our heritage.
That's the thing I think about the most, is what type of people they were.
Doyline is the director of the Augusta Historical Society, and the restoration of this log building is her project.
I've been very fascinated with the cellar. They just laid the logs down on the ground and built up. Many of my ancestors were early settlers here in Kansas, and they lived in log houses. My grandparents lived in log houses. So when I go in, I think about the people and what life must have been for them at that time.
Doyline has been instrumental in restoring Augusta's historical museum as a living monument to the past.
We have a lot more people here in Augusta that have become more interested in the museum and in the log house as we have begun our restoration.
But history isn't confined to Doyline's work. Her own home was built in 1886.
The house we bought, there are so many beautiful things in it. When you start to strip away the paint that's been put on for years, the wood underneath is just beautiful, and they have a lot of character.
But it's here, among the display cases of Augusta's history, that Doyline feels her community spirit.
Well, this boot and shoe were, when they were digging up under the log house to put a new foundation in, they found this underneath. Oh, it's very exciting. It's very special.
And history is special. More and more, Doyline and the Augusta Museum Board are convincing townspeople to support the museum and the log building project.
I believe that we cannot better ourselves for tomorrow unless we know about our yesterdays.
Doyline led efforts to raise the $60,000 needed to restore the cabin, and that project took a couple of years to complete.
Doyline passed away in 2005 of cancer. She was only 58. But her best friend, Jane Mathis, is now president of Augusta's Historical Society Board. Her husband, Eldon, is also on the board.
Now, 30 years later, they're working again to restore and repair that cabin once again, and I'm sure Doyline is very happy about it. But she died way too soon.
Way too soon, but her
58.
legacy lives on in that incredible cabin.
Right. They're doing a good job in Augusta.
Some painters specialize in landscapes, others portraits, but Harold Smalley, his specialty was signs.
Sure was. Hand-painted signs. Now, those aren't so common anymore, but in 1998, Harold Smalley was still keeping busy with a steady hand.
I imagine you could say it's a dying art.
In this tiny garage on Wichita's south side, Harold Smalley continues a tradition he began in 1948, painting signs by hand.
Yes, yeah. I like to hand letter. It takes a lot longer. People today, they want something done, they want it done now. This is just an example of the shading.
Harold's been painting these signs for half a century. Now partially retired, most of his work is done in vinyl, and that takes much less time, but it's this old hand lettering. That's what Harold loves most.
Not much demand for this anymore. I have very few calls for hand lettering. It's fun. I miss it. I really miss it, yeah. Especially when my wife got me out in the yard working or something, and I miss doing sign painting. Bless her heart.
It's through this gate where Wichita's oldest active sign painter relaxes.
Well, this is a hobby of mine, and when I don't have much to do or in the wintertime. I cut most of all this stuff out in the wintertime and I'm in my basement shop.
Harold has a backyard full of this stuff.
Well, my wife calls it a menagerie, backyard menagerie.
Everywhere you look, there's something new.
I got to be doing something. You can't sit around and watch TV all day. I still feel too good to just sit around.
Harold is a lot like his friend in the tree. There's always a lot to do before nightfall.
You get caught up with it, really, you do.
Back in the garage before he quits, it is cleanup time.
Now, here's how you used to get your excess out of the brush, and you get it all over your pants.
There are remarkable and colorful things in Harold's garage, and if you look close enough, he has a tip for you.
You work the oil up into the brush, preserves it, doesn't harden when you're then, and your brush will last like that for years.
And that's just motor oil?
Just regular motor oil. It's plenty good. You can use Vaseline or something like that, but see, that brings that out just real beautiful there.
With brushes cleaned and time to spare, the backyard is the refuge.
It's fun up until the time you have to pick them all up and mow the grass and put them back down.
Harold Smalley is one of those guys who has quietly served Wichitans for years.
You gotta get old, that's one way of doing it.
Now, Harold passed away in 2005, but wherever you see a hand-painted sign that's been around for a few years, well, it just might be the handiwork of Harold Smalley.
Isn't it nice that he did that up until the digital world came into existence?
Yeah, the old sign painters, you don't see them hardly at all anymore. The digital world took over, and it's kind of a lost art.
It is. Well, the handwriting is on the wall. Now, it's time for us to scoot on out of here.
Yeah, Hatteberg's people at kpts.org. Just email us to this address if you have a question or a comment, and we always enjoy hearing from you. Until next time, I'm Larry Hatteberg, and thanks for watching.
I'm Susan Peters. It was great to have you with us. We'll see you again real soon.